And what is the deal, friends? We are back at it, rolling into another hour. It is OG Sports Wrap on the network. Thanks for hanging out with us. I'm Professor G. Remember, um, a lot of this is going to be made available for you in snippets, so you don't have to spend the entire time. So if you missed some of it on the radio program, you can always find me at Sports Wrap OG, one word, Sports Wrap OG, lowercase. And you can check it out if you want to join Substack. You and I can interact, and it would make for a wonderful, wonderful world for us to share. Now, as we continue, this is Black History Month, and you look back and you want to take some pride in the accomplishments of those from your culture. And I bring that up because today marks the last NFL hiring of this cycle, where they had, I believe, 12 openings, and no Black American coaches were hired. And have to admit, somewhat troubling, but I will make the argument, in all fairness, that over the last 10 years, you can make a compelling argument that of the 17 Black coaches who held either full time or interim head coaching roles during this period, and we're talking about a period from 2016 to 2026, where we are right now, Black head coaches are 428, 511, and 4. That is a win percentage of 45.5%, not even 500. Now, again, you are judged at the end of the day by what your record says you are, okay? And in this particular instance, I have to say that many Black American coaches have not been put into situations when they get to the league so that they can succeed. And despite the work of the Rooney Rule to open up at least interview opportunities for Black coaches, I mean, it's hard to believe where you're going to find the next Mike Tomlin, who came after a pretty successful Dennis Green era. There was Tony Dungy, who helped it and was the vanguard when he won the Super Bowl for other Black coaches. But other than that, I mean, when you look at this new era where Black coaches were at least given a seat at the table, it really hasn't worked out right, except for Tomlin, who over that stretch was 98 and 63. How about that? So he won 60% of his games. He's out of the game because he wanted to be out of the game. So let's just take him off the list. He had done what he could do. He won a championship. He's a paragon of virtue. I mean, he's the kind of role model that you want all other contemporary Black American coaches to follow. Yet when you don't win, you can't keep your job. And then there's certain places that are just spots where Black coaches simply go to die. Seriously. And Todd Bowles is the perfect example. We don't know how good a coach Todd Bowles is because his two ports of call on his coaching journey were the New York Jets and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Okay. Now, at least in Tampa's case, they are somewhat synonymous with winning a Super Bowl under Dungy, right? So here we go. I'm sorry. They won theirs under who was that? Bruce Arians, Tom Brady. They had done it before. So now here we are in this moment, and let me self-correct because Tony Dungy won Indianapolis. But until recently, coaches got the worst spots ever. Anthony Lynn is a perfect example of a coach who was the coach with the Chargers and was 2 games above 500, but that was not good enough. Jim Caldwell had his stint, 18-14 with the Detroit Lions. They said, that's not good enough. You got to go. Brian Flores, who had to sue the league because his owner wanted him to tank games. Think about it. Brian Flores tanks a game. He probably keeps the Miami Dolphins job. Stephen Ross wanted him to lose games, and he didn't lose. So he finishes a game below 500 for his tenure, and he's blackballed for getting another coaching job. All right? And poor Hugh Jackson. There's no way you can put anybody in Cleveland and feel like they get a chance to win. Raheem Morris, disappointing time with the Atlanta Falcons. Notice these teams have traditionally been awful where black coaches get their opening shot. And if you don't take full advantage of said opening shot, then what happens? Well, you don't get another shot. You're reduced to coordinator status. They don't recycle black coaches the way they recycle white coaches. Hell, John Harbaugh was fired for about a week and got the job with the Giants. It is amazing how this double standard is talked about, but when you look at the numbers, and as a group, the guys that have been hired haven't finished at 500 as a group, it simply gives fuel to the fire of billionaire white owners who are, I think, uncomfortable with hiring black coaches because they still have an underlying sense that that black coaches aren't as competent as their white counterparts, or as we've seen with Clint Kubiak and the Raiders, it's what's in a name. I mean, you just think about it. The league right now itself, when you look at coaches, right, are a bunch of coaches who have famous last names who are tied to the league. Kyle Shanahan, Mike Shanahan's kid, right? I mean, think about it. We talked about the aforementioned Kubiak, who I believe was a coordinator for Dan Reeves and Mike Shanahan in Denver. Heck, I'm old enough to remember Kubiak when he played quarterback, I believe, at Texas A&M, when we only had college football on ABC on Saturdays. That's right. It was even before CBS got into the game. So I remember that. But if you got a famous last name, Sean McVay got his break. I'm not saying these guys aren't great coaches, but it's a faster pathway to coordinators positions, which then elevates you to head coach. But we got to be mindful of the fact that a lot of coaches put into untenable situations. Most recently, Antonio Pierce. Antonio Pierce coached 26 games for the Raiders and was fired with a 500 mark. He was 13-13. They didn't like the direction that the team was going. Have they moved any better since he left? And on comes Kubiak after a year where Pete Carroll was supposed to turn everything around, bringing his famous last name. And it's interesting to me. How can you have grown up in a household like Clint Kubiak did in Denver, where the Raiders, like they were with just about everybody in that division at that time, were the team that you hated the most? I just find it amazing. Absolutely amazing. So, it's unfortunate that 0 black coaches have been hired in this cycle. There were 10 head coaching vacancies and none hired by a black coach. Just saying. So we're going to go into the 2026 season with only 3 black head coaches on the sidelines in the NFL. All right, we'll make that 2, quite frankly, because Mike Tomlin has retired. There'll be Todd Bowles and D'Amico Ryans. Okay, that's it. And you have to question whether or not these days there is a glass ceiling still for black coaches. Now, again, according to statistics, and I did some research on this to get into these numbers, black coaches have taken teams to the playoffs at higher rates historically than their white counterparts. 67% compared to 39%. However, that is a skewed number just a little bit, boys and girls, only because there are fewer coaches. So if you got 4 coaches in the league and 3 of them make the playoffs, and you have the remaining 12 or 20 teams in the league, it's going to skew that average. But I will say this, they are often fired with higher average win totals than the white counterparts. So let's be real for a second. Okay, there is this clinical term. When people are doing research, they always have to come up with some kind of clinical phrase that sort of defines the circumstance. So the term that they're using right now is called, quote, inferior opportunities. Now, in many respects, it's referring to what they would consider systemic disparities where Black American NFL head coaches are hired into unstable environments with limited resources, facing stricter performance standards, and they get shorter tenures than their white counterparts. But the question is, how do you overcome these barriers? Can't be making any excuses anymore. Folks are getting to the table and they're getting their shot. They are. And in the case of Pittsburgh, you look at the Mike Tomlin tenure, and I got real close friends who are football fans from Pittsburgh, and they had enough of Mike Tomlin. Now they still on that misguided what is it? Chuck Noll, Bill Cowher era. They're expecting championship or bust, and it's a changing landscape of the league. There's too much parity. But when it comes to opportunity now, this is a watershed moment for Black coaches in the NFL. So many people have scratched and clawed and worked so hard to give the Black coach his opportunity. And to this point, what do we have? 2 Black coaches that have won Super Bowls. We've had coordinators that have done a great job and won Super Bowls, didn't necessarily translate to them as head coaches. A guy like Lovie Smith comes to mind. A great assistant for Tony Dungy, and when he got his chance to head coach in Tampa, things didn't work right. But then again, for about 40, 50 years of their existence, it didn't work down there. Hell, it didn't work under John McKay. They stumbled across one with John Gruden. So where do we go from here? We see that opportunities are now going to be limited. If this series of coaching hires has incredible success, if you're the billionaire who owns the team, do you even want to sit down at the table with somebody that you're not going to hire just to appease the Rooney Rule? A sad commentary on how hard coaches have worked to get this opportunity. And it's even more sad how Black coaches don't have famous last names and their family members weren't in front offices so that they could have a lower ceiling to climb over, if you will, than their counterparts. It's your boy, Professor G. Mark Gray. It's OG Sports Wrap on the network. Don't forget, download the mobile app. We all we got.